Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik from Figured Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and today we're going to be taking a look at this. This is a Super Famicom Junior. Now we're going to be cleaning it up, restoring it. Now if you don't care, there's a little bit of a backstory here. If you don't care about any of that, feel free to skip to the time code to go straight to the cleaning. Otherwise, backstory time. So the deal with this console is that this actually came out near the end of the Super Nintendo lifespan. In fact, it actually was released, I think, after the N64 was already out. So not a whole lot of people bought this. It was really only around for like a year. We had it in North America as the Super Nintendo Junior. It just copied the exact same body design as this, the Super Famicom Junior. Now, if you've seen the Super Famicom, you'll know that this is kind of a more logical design as a spiritual successor of a sequel console, if you will, or a reiteration. Rather than redesign it again for North America with more of a boxy look, they just kept the exact same molding but changed the color scheme. So yeah, this was the little weird middle piece in there, and that kind of explains why the Super Nintendo Junior looks like this. But yeah, so my story with it, not too complicated. Last year I was in Japan. I've wanted one of these for a while, and I finally found one at a price I was willing to pay. Picked it up. I showed it to you guys in a video at the time. But yeah, so I've got it back here, and full disclosure, this console actually completely works. There's actually nothing wrong with it. But that said, it is a little dusty, it's a little dirty, and we can clean it up and make it look better. And of course, if you're out there and you have a Super Famicom Junior and looking to restore it, looking to get it working, hopefully this guide helps you, because there's not really a whole lot that goes wrong with these things. They just get kind of dirty is basically all that really happens to them. Unfortunately, in 2019, this is not the most useful console. I mean, again, there's many ways to play Super Nintendo games or Super Famicom games, but I don't even mean that. Sadly, when Nintendo did these, they stripped out S-video and RGB support, so the only video output on this thing is composite, which is gross, and it's certainly not the way you'd ever want to play Super Nintendo games. These things can be modified, and once they're modified, the RGB output is actually beautiful on them. This one has not been modified. Maybe one day that will happen, maybe not. Might just keep it stock just because of what it is. But yeah, so regardless, let's go ahead and get into it. So in true Nintendo fashion, this thing has to be, somewhat unique to get into. On the bottom, you'll see that there are 4 screw points, 2 there and 2 up here. Now, Nintendo doesn't use standard screws. In fact, they have their own proprietary thing called a game bit. Now, I've had the same game bit screwdriver for years. You can buy these on eBay or other third-party sources. There's usually 2 different heads that will come with them. This is the bigger head. I forget what the dimensions are exactly, but the bigger one is what you would want for this, and the smaller one is sometimes you can use to get into cartridges. Yeah, so in this case, we can do this. There's also the Bic pen method, though I highly don't recommend that. Some people say that if you take a Bic plastic pen and kind of like mesh it in there, you can sometimes wedge it and kind of make it into a screwdriver, but that's not recommended. These things are not expensive, and all Nintendo consoles except for the NES use it, and Famicom, I guess. So I would recommend doing that instead. I take that back. The later stuff like the Wii, the Wii U, Switch, etc. don't. But the N64, Super Nintendo, GameCube, they all use this. So anyway, point is, let's get into this thing. Once you have the screws out, all you do is take the lid off, and underneath you'll see not much to it. There's a screw there, and a screw there, and a screw there. Those are Phillips head. We're going to remove those as well and disconnect this. But before we do that, let's take a look under here. Again, that's the board. There's not much to it, but again, we'll tear that down in a second. But like I said, go back to this and unscrew all 3 of those points. With the screws out, now we can disconnect this piece right here, just plastic, pull that out. And then we also get the cartridge flaps, take those out as well. And then there's a couple other parts down here, the power and reset button. Now we can get these out by just kind of pushing in on the plastic right there, and then that will pop out. And then the same thing goes for here, push down on that, and then that's out. So now at that point, the entire lid is off. So this part, as well as the 2 buttons, the lid pieces, and this cartridge assembly mechanism, whatever, the tray. These are all plastic parts. So of course, what you're going to want to do at this point is take all of them and rub them with soap and water and scrub them and just clean them all up, get them nice and shiny, and then bring them back out here to dry. While we put the other parts off to the side to dry, let's go ahead and take a look at this part now. Now, obviously, not much to it. In fact, the motherboard here is really just connected with 7 Phillips head screws. One there, there, on the 2 on the cartridge slot, and then one up there. So a total of 7. So go ahead and remove those. Keep in mind that the silver screws are different. There's the 2 right there on the cartridge and 1 in the back. The 4 bronze ones up here will remain there in the end. Once you have all of the screws out, very simple process, we're just gonna remove the board. Basically, I recommend lifting from here, from the controller ports, and then just kind of lifting up back here, and that's it. This is the entire console right there. So just take that out, and then you're left with the underside, which has a nice big clump of dust right there. Gross. But yeah, this is just plastic. So again, we're gonna take this and we're gonna scrub this up with soap and water, just like the lid part, and then I'll get back to you. Now that we're down to just the board, it's time to basically do the one thing that's the most essential to actually getting this thing to work again, which is to clean the cartridge slot. However, before we do that, we can also just do some surface level cleaning, because there is dust bits around, and any bit of dust you get out of here is for the best. So what I recommend for this process is just taking a little bit of Windex, or this is known as window lean in certain countries, and then just some Q-tips like this, and then just grab one and then just kind of do a surface clean. I mean, you could obviously do this with like a paper towel or something like that. I just kind of prefer to do it with a Q-tip, only because then I have a greater sense of control over you know, which parts are actually getting cleaned. So just taking it like that and just getting, you know, some dirt and dust and grime and stuff like that off of here. But you know, you get it. It's you know, not that difficult of a process, just getting dust out of there. We'll get some around the cartridge slot there in a second, but yeah, just cleaning off the plastic bits, and you get the idea. But basically go ahead, I mean, look at that. There's some dirt there. Gross. But yeah, basically I'm gonna go ahead and do a full spot clean around there after this part. But before we do that, before I continue on with that process, the other part of this is to, like I said, clean the cartridge slot. Because 95% of the time, if a cartridge-based console is not working, it's because this is dirty or the game is dirty. Now, in the case of the game, what you do is, again, take some Windex or window lean here, spray it onto Q-tip just like this, and then just kind of rub it on the pins on a cartridge, go back and forth a couple times, get it wet, get it dry, and then just kind of get the dirt out of there. That's for the cartridges. But for the console, we basically have to do a very similar process. But as you might have noticed, we don't want to go ahead and stick a Q-tip in there. It would rip it to shreds. So what I actually recommend is this. This is a cartridge cleaning kit. These are kind of hard to find now. I mean, this thing is literally from the mid-90s, so I wouldn't blame you for not being able to find this. There are newer versions of this now that do exist out there. I know my buddy John Riggs from the Metal Jesus crew, he was actually, you know, giving out a lot of cartridge cleaning kits for a while. So things like that do exist. There's the credit card method, though I don't recommend that. But basically, in the end, the idea that at the end is that you want to take a device like this and spray it with, again, I'm just going to spray it with a little bit of Windex here, and kind of rub that on both sides like that. And then just take this, and this one's specifically designed for the Super Famicom or Super Nintendo, and then put it into the cartridge slot multiple times, back and forth, until you eventually get, you know, nice, solid, firm attachment in there. And then there should be, if there's much dust, which there's a little, you can't really see much of it on my finger, but yeah, some dust came out of there. Granted, I'm also doing it at kind of a weird angle, but I'm gonna do that a few more times. There's also these two sides here for the extra pins for like the EFX chip and all that stuff. I actually have a smaller one of these specifically for that purpose. So at this point, what I'm gonna do, like I said, continue this process, then continue that process, and get this thing as nice as I possibly can. All right, they've been washed, cleaned, they look pretty good. Obviously, I just used soap and water and a scrub and everything just to kind of get dirt and grime out of there. They look pretty solid, not much else to do with this. However, if, this doesn't apply to me, but it could apply to you. If you had like, let's say that you just had like some black scuff mark or something on there, at this point I would show you how to get rid of it, which is you would take this is Mr. Clean's Magic Eraser. It's basically this like fine sandpaper type of thing used for cleaning, and at this point you would take it and just kind of, you know, wipe it over that, and then just kind of get it out and then re-rinse it and get the dust off that comes from it. Be careful with this stuff. This can actually take logos and things off, so be very careful about where you use it, because it is pretty strong stuff. But that doesn't apply to me. But one thing that does apply to me is this. I noticed on the front of this console, it's dull, it's not that big of a deal. The color right here on the front is a little sun faded. There's a little bit of yellowing that's happening there. So I think I'm gonna tackle that. Now the way you do that, I've done entire videos on this, but we're gonna do the McDonald's solution as I referred to it in previous videos. We're gonna take this. This is Salon Care Volume Cream. It's basically a hydrogen peroxide composition that you kind of use and just kind of wipe over the material there, over the plastic. We're gonna put it on there and then lay it on some bubble wrap and let it sit in the sun. And in theory, that should turn it back to its normal color, although that process takes a while. So in the meantime, we're just gonna wait for all this stuff to dry. But let's pretend that it doesn't apply to you. Pretend you don't need to do this. At this point, you would still need to wait for it to dry, because the last thing you wanna do is put it together with moisture still in there. Of course, you can use a towel to accelerate this process. Figured it'd be more responsible to actually show you this. So you'll notice I've got gloves on. This is important because this stuff is actually, you know, can be really bad for your skin. So this is a minor thing we're gonna be doing here, but I'll just show it to you. Basically, we're just gonna pour some, you know, right here into my hand, if I can get this. There's not much left in this particular bottle, but yeah, okay, so I've got some on there. Not much, but you get the idea. I'll get some out. Anyway, so you take this stuff and you just kind of wipe it onto the affected area. So in this case, just the front of the console, like that, and just kind of give it a nice little bath of this stuff, and then just leave it like this. It's just gonna sit in the sun. The irony, I know. It's just gonna sit in the sun like that, and then it'll probably have to stay that way for quite a few hours. But once we've done that, we'll take a look at the results. Okay, I've completed the de-yellowing process. I did it on here as I showed you guys. I also ended up doing it on the front of the bottom of the console. Now this process actually took a few days because it requires a lot of time for this to sit out in the sun, and you have to kind of redo it every once in a while, and then for, you know, time for the quality change there. I did an entire video on the process of de-yellowing. It's called like de-yellowing a Super Nintendo. There's 2 different methods. You can watch that for more information. This is just the very abridged version. But basically, I've gone through that process, and the result is that the front is more of its normal original color again. So assuming we're now at this point, it's time to take the console and actually put it back together. So we're gonna take the board here and just kind of sit it back into the console. Not much to it. We have our 3 silver screws. Now those go here, and then there's the one that goes back there. And then we take the other 4 screws and put them in there, there, and there. So proceed to do that. All right, the bottom is now back together, as you can see, no issues there. Put that off to the side, and we're gonna take care of the lid. Now we're gonna start with the reset button here. So all you gotta do is just pop it back into place. So you can see how there's like a shape there. You really can't screw it up. It can really only go in one way. So there you go. And then we take the same thing with the power switch here. The little button part there, the little indentation will go on the left. Plop it right into the spot, and bam, those spots are in. Flip it over, and we gotta take our cartridge tray here. So we have to take our pieces here and line them up. And this one apparently will go in this way. Again, it's pretty much foolproof. There's like a little protrusion here, that thing. That'll have to line up, and you really can't screw this up. There's only one way any of this stuff can fit it back into place. So, you know, don't be intimidated. I mean, this is a super easy one, but yeah, like I said, you really can't mess that up. There's really only one way for that to go back in. So then take the cartridge slot here, the cartridge bay, and then just kind of load that on top like that. There you go. And then there's the 3 screw points, and you have your 3 brass screws. I think you can figure out what you're supposed to do. Now that this is back in place, it's time to sit them back on together. So there's not much to this other than to recognize the power switch here. I have it in the down position, which means the power switch here must also be in the down position. Then all you do is just take it and sit it back on top, just like that. It will very easily go back together. Now, of course, you have the 4 screw points at the bottom, and you have your 4 game bits. Obviously, put them back in there. Okay, and that's pretty much it. You've got the console back together. It's looking pretty good. I'm not super happy with the de-yellowing, but it's better than it was. But yeah, there's one last thing we can do here to kind of shine this thing up. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take this. This is Pledge. This is also known as Pronto in certain countries. I got the non-moisturizing version. I'm always told that that's the worst version. Basically, all you do at this point is kind of take it and spray some on like a napkin or a paper towel or whatever, and then you just kind of wipe it around the plastic like this. Obviously be careful, you don't want to get too much of it inside there. But yeah, it's what it's gonna do is it's gonna dry onto here, and it'll bring out this nice like shiny luster, this nice coat that'll make the whole thing look really good. To be honest though, this has more of an effect on like black consoles and dark consoles. On white, or at least in this case, a gray console, it's not gonna have a huge effect, but it should be pretty good. So I'm gonna do the top, the sides, the bottom, etc. Then let it dry for like 10-15 minutes, and we'll take a look at it. Okay, so there we go, it's completed. I've put this, Pledge on there, let it dry for a bit, and it looks, I think, really good. Not perfect, like I said, with the sun the sun standing damage that I tried to reverse. It's not as good as I would have hoped, but that goes with the territory. But aside from that, it looks really good. So at this point, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hook it up and make sure it still works, because it did originally, and yeah, we'll go from there. All right, guys, I've got it set up here. As you can see, not the nicest of displays, but that's because I didn't want to you know, you see how those things are jointed together. Didn't really feel like rewrapping that stuff, but I just wanted to show you the point of this, which is that the console works with my beat up copy of Super Back to the Future 2 there. You can see it boot up right away, no problems whatsoever, which was to be expected. Now, again, the point of this video wasn't so much to show you like, hey, this thing that already worked still works. It was really to show you like, hey, if you have one of these, you could potentially restore it by doing this, either through the cleaning process of just making it look better, or potentially if you have one that's not working at all, this could save it. It's not uncommon for that to be the case. So yeah, there you go. See, Super Back to the Future 2. Anyway, that's it, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all later.